Going live. We're going to cook us a soup today. So we've already prepared some of the stuff so that we don't spend time on preparation. Now, we may do this in the future. It'll depend on what you guys find interesting. There are some shows that I've seen that I love the way that they do it. There used to be an old show called Good Eats by Alton Brown, and I loved how he put cameras everywhere, right? So we may migrate toward that, but right now we're just getting better at our presentation. We're trying to keep these around 20 to 30 minutes. So we're going to prepare us a soup. It's one that my wife picked out. It's a quinoa vegetable soup, vegetable quinoa. So the bulk of the ingredients for the vegetables, we got some spinach, which we'll put in toward the end, and we've got us some diced onions. We've got us some diced carrots. We've got us some diced celery. So I've already pre-prepared that so it won't take as long. I've talked a little bit about how I love gas. Why do I love gas? Natural gas is fast on, fast adjusted, and fast off, right? So it is, in my opinion, better than in electric in the fact that electric takes time to heat up. It seems slower. I can adjust the cooking speed quickly if I need to. And here's another thing that can adjust your cooking speed. If something's getting too hot, too fast, getting ready to burn, what can we add? Water. Also on the show, we're hardcore. We're cooking hardcore. Do I always eat hardcore? No, but do I recommend it? So it depends on the level of chaos in your health and how long do you want to live? How functional do you want to live for as long as you can? I think going the route of forks over knives is the best option. And there's those of you out there that may disagree with me. Maybe there's some level of meat you need. I don't believe so. You can bring those arguments, put them in the show. Like, do I have to have protein to maintain muscle or whatever that looks like? I don't think you do. But you could, if we're going to have a decent conversation, I'd love to have that conversation with you. So anyway, we're going to first turn on the stove over here. Got a big pot. We're going to get a little tiny bit of water in the bottom of that pot getting hot. So I should probably have this going on earlier. I should have the stove going before because it'll take a little bit of time for that to heat up. So once again, and I would say that I'm comparing this to electricity. It would take longer for the electricity to get that pot hot. Should have had the pot hot already so we could have been cooking. Like I said, I'm trying to keep these limited to 20 to 30 minutes. So sometimes I show on my Facebook page, and I'll figure out how to do that on YouTube eventually too, right? So I'll get better at this as I go on. As I go, I will improve. And I would love to invite you to come here, maybe virtually, and teach me a dish, especially if you have come from a culture or cultural dishes, right? Like I love exploring different spice combinations, right? So, hey, there's the Italian, right? They use oregano a lot. They use, this is more of a French, but something I learned from my wife today, and I did not know. Marjoram and thyme are very similar. Marjoram is a little bit sweeter. I think it's maybe even the same plant. I'll have to do a little bit more research on that. But you can substitute one for the other. Marjoram, I think, is more considered in line with French cooking, and oregano is more in line with Italian cooking. And I don't know if maybe the plants are a little bit varied or what. But anyway, just if you have a recipe and it calls for oregano and you have marjoram, use that if you don't have the oregano. Vice versa. If you have a recipe that calls for marjoram and you don't have oregano, supposedly a similar taste. I'm not as familiar with marjoram, so I'm not sure if that's true. Go out there and do some research for yourself, right? So to me, it's about the experimentation. Cooking is much different than baking. Cooking, you can experiment more with the taste. So having said that, we're starting to get some bubbles in the bottom of our water. We're going to add us some carrots. We're going to add us some diced carrots. We're going to add us some diced onions. We're going to add us some diced celery. So 3 carrots, 2 ribs of celery, 1 onion. They seem very similar in the amount that they produced. So we're going to put those in for a couple minutes. I'm pouring in the onions. I'm pouring in the carrots. And I'm pouring in the celery. Maybe I'll get a camera that fits over the stove here too. That might be bad for me because then I'd have to. So I'm going to just try to make sure that this pan doesn't get too black. I'm going to turn the heat down just a little bit. Medium high is what it calls for. I'm going to call that a 5 on my stove. I'm going to put a timer on here. We're going to let those cook down for a couple minutes. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add some garlic. I did have regular garlic, but I also have some of this sitting around. So sometimes I talk about the hierarchy of health. This is already pre-minced garlic, but they do add some citric acid, which I'm not educated enough to know is that good or is that bad. I don't think that citric acid being added is too bad of a thing, right? So, and I do love glass as far as storage goes. There's less of a chance of that flavoring, not flavoring, but making it worse for you, right? So I talk about the hierarchy of health, and if you have the whole vegetable, much healthier than if you have a can. Now, cans in the past were a little worse because they had PBAs in them. That plastic lining inside of the can still may have some stuff that probably isn't the greatest for you. So a lot of times when I'm having vegetables, also notice this one, we're supposed to be using cannelloni beans, but I'm using butter beans instead. So the original recipe, cannelloni beans, I'm changing the recipe a tiny bit. If you want the recipe, let's shout out my wife sent me this recipe, knutrition.com, knutrition.com. So I'm varying it a little bit because she uses cannelloni beans, which I love cannelloni beans. Butter beans, in my past, I don't remember them being my favorite bean, but I'm trying to expand what I like. And I also find that if I mix flavor profiles, I can eat stuff that sometimes I don't typically like quinoa, a very great grain for you, but it's not my favorite grain by itself. So let's go over here, stir this a little bit more. I'm trying to get these veggies to where they're not burning, but they're getting, especially the onions. I like to get the onions close to being translucent before I start adding the other stuff. We're going to put the vent on because I have in the past. Now, on the stovetop, I'm much better, but when I'm talking and cooking, sometimes I burn it. I don't know if you saw last week, I had some broccoli, burnt it. I still ate it, but you probably wouldn't like it in your recipe burnt. So I'm trying to follow this fine line, walk this fine line between not burning stuff and talking to you about health and what I think health means and how I think that, hey, if I could get you vegan, I would love it. But I will consider it a win if I just get you to eat more veggies, more plants, more fruits, more seeds, more mushrooms. Whatever it is that you're not eating, if I can get a little bit more of that into your diet, I think that can only be helpful. So, having said that, our veggies here are cooking down. The next thing that we're going to add, once these get to a certain level of translucence, is what I like to call it. It's called for 2 to 3 minutes. This may take a little longer because I put a little more water in here than was probably necessary. Last time I cooked, the bottom of my pan got really black. I don't want to do that to my wife again. I would have washed it, but she got mad and washed it herself. And I don't like making my wife mad if I can avoid it, right? So don't make your wife mad. Then we add the garlic. I forgot. That was supposed to be 2 to 3. 2 cloves minced, right? So this is already pre-minced. So I'm going to basically just get a spoon and take out here what is approximately what I think is 2 cloves. I love garlic, so I will err on the side of having too much garlic than I will not enough garlic. So I'm going to take some garlic. I'm going to throw that in the pan. I can already smell the lovely flavor. I just put a ½ teaspoon more, right? So we're going to keep that going. And garlic is extremely healthy for you, right? So there's been studies done, and if you want one vegetable that maybe has the biggest effect on cancer cells, garlic may be it, right? So I love to watch some of the scientific stuff. Dr. Michael Greger, there's other doctors in there, but he has a website called nutritionfacts.org. I follow him a lot for some of the advice I give. I think that he is right on. I think the scientific research that he does is amazing. So the next thing we're going to do after these cook for a couple minutes is we're going to be adding some dried thyme, dried oregano, pepper flakes. I'm going to leave out till the end, just because my wife does not handle, and I would love for her to try this. So we're going to put a little bit of thyme. It's supposed to be a teaspoon of thyme. Thyme leaves, right? So a lot of times you get crushed or more ground up thyme. We've got a little bit of ground oregano. There's not much oregano. I doubt it's a whole teaspoon. So I'm also going to add a little bit of herbes de Provence. So now herbes de Provence, according to this label, has thyme, marjoram, rosemary, basil, sage, and lavender, right? So I'm going to put just a very little bit of this in there, in addition to the other spices that I have. So the oregano, we're going to go ahead and get rid. This is less than a teaspoon in here. I'm going to put all of this oregano in there. Then I'm going to put a little bit of the thyme leaves. I'm also going to put in some of this herbes de Provence, which is not what the original recipe called for. We like to experiment with what we like here and see, hey, are those good flavors together? So once again, this is kind of more marjoram, and some of these others are more of a French. So hopefully it'll still have a little bit of that flavor profile that we want. So a little bit of herbes de Provence. We're just cooking this down a little bit longer. Pretty soon we're going to put the white beans, which we've got butter beans instead of white beans. We're going to put some quinoa and some diced tomatoes, right? So once again, we talked a little bit about I'm going to just stir those spices so they're very well mixed into this. We're going to let that cook down a little bit more. Once again, I'm not seeing the translucence that I love to see with onions in here yet. So I would love to see these get a little bit more translucent before we put the other ingredients in there. So this is 12 ounces. The recipe calls for a cup. Cup is 8 ounces. I've also got some other quinoa here. So I'm going to go ahead and put in, once again, talking about the hierarchy of health. Cans are lower on the hierarchy of health, but for purposes of, I don't know how to make diced tomatoes from scratch, and maybe we will explore that on this show. Once again, I'm going to call out to you. Will you cook with me and teach me? Because I am by no means good yet. So we're also going to be adding, when we add these other ingredients, we're going to be adding some vegetable broth, 4 cups, which is 32 ounces. 8 ounces is a cup. So we're going to pour that in there. We're also got 2 cups of water. I may reduce this a little bit because we've got some water still in here to begin with. So in just a little bit, I'm going to throw in the quinoa. I'm going to throw in the beans and the diced tomatoes. Then we're going to put a bunch of fluid, vegetable broth, and some water. So let's go ahead and start putting the quinoa in here. Let that soak up some water. Some of the quinoa, right? So I'm going to use less than 2/3 of this one because it's 8 ounces, right? So what do you think about 2/3? I'm going with it. I'm putting in the beans. These are not cannelloni beans. These are butter beans. I've rinsed these. Once again, these are not a low sodium. Once again, most American foods have way too much salt in them. So I like to rinse things very well. The tomatoes maybe have too much salt. I'm not going to rinse those because they've got a lot of. So I've got fire roasted. I've just got the local grocery store brands, diced tomatoes. I've got fire roasted and I've got regular. Right, so we've got all of our butter beans. We've got our diced tomatoes. We're going to stir that around really well. We've still got it basically just about 5. We're letting that heat up through and through. And we're going to add some fluid. Then I think it says about 20 minutes. So we may not finish this soup before we're done. We're going to dump in the whole thing, which is 4 cups of vegetable broth. Then I'm going to basically put in the rest of water. It says 2 cups. I'm going to gauge that just by how soupy it feels. You're also going to add a bay leaf toward the end. Bay leaves, usually dried bay leaves, you're just removing the dry bay leaf before you eat it, typically. I have seen fresh bay leaves. I wouldn't even know how to cook with one. Oh, let's see, what else have we got going on here? Broth and water. This one, they're using Parmesan rind, which is cheese. I don't eat cheese for this for this show. I don't cook with it. Add the Parmesan rind bell. Stir to ensure they submerge in the broth. Bring the soup to a boil. Basically, let's go ahead. I think we're going to put all the water in. I lied. 2 whole cups. We've got us what's left of some bay leaves. There's not much left in here, and these are kind of crunched. So let's see what I got to do with that to get them out at the end. Not something for you to worry about, just something for me to worry about. We're going to just stir that around. We're going to turn the heat up to 9. We're going to put the lid on. You may not see me finish because I may cut the show off before everything's done. Go to the Facebook page if you want to see YouTube. I'm not sure how to. Maybe I'll do an extra video that just shows what it looks like after. I don't know. The more people that get on here, the more people that tell me how to run this, I might do it. But once again, my ideas, veggies, fruits, seeds, nuts, mushrooms, anything that's whole plant-based, I'm trying to get more of that into your diet. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm eliminating oil. If you watch the Esselsteins and Forks Over Knives, oil is bad, right? So what's the number 1 killer in America? It's still heart disease. I'm a cardiac cath lab nurse, and I'm trying to prevent as much of that as I can. If I can get myself out of a job because I'm doing this, I'm game. So eat more veggies. 5 minutes before we're done, we're going to put 2 cups of spinach. That may be a little more than 2 cups, right? So basically, that's 1 whole bunch from the grocery store of the leaf part, not all the stems. The stems, I left most of that out because most people don't like the stems. I do. So once again, we're going to let that boil. Once it comes to a boil, we're going to cook it for about 20 minutes at a simmer. And then we are going to add, I'm going to do it for about 15 minutes, just see what it looks like. Then toward the end, I'm going to add the spinach to that. Black pepper. I don't have any black pepper here, but I got a lot of black pepper. I love black pepper. I'm going to add that toward the end. So once again, what I would love from you is if next week you would love to see a certain recipe, come on the channel, let us know. Go on Facebook, let us know, right? Those are the 2 main places where I'm at. I'm also on some of the other platforms. So if you find me, reach out, tell me what kind of recipes you would like to see cooked. if you have something that is amazing, you love the taste of, and it is plant-based, or you can teach me how to do it plant-based with no oil, with no white flour. I do sometimes add noodles, which in the hierarchy of health is not the best. Whole grains are better, but I will use noodles. I will use sometimes things that are a little bit processed. So noodles is probably the biggest one, and that gets, you know what I mean, a lot of Asian dishes have a lot of noodles. So I'm willing to bend the rules a little bit on noodles. So if you want to add some noodles, you've got an amazing dish. I'd love to connect with you. I would love to cook with you. I would love for you to teach me if you can. I'm pretty hard-headed, right? So my wife sometimes gets frustrated with me. I don't know as much as she does. She's a much better cook than I am. I'm trying to get better. I used to cook more. I've gotten away from it because my wife is such a good cook. But she uses oil in her cooking, and I'm trying to get away from that or minimize it because I think that it affects your endothelium, right? It affects the inside of your arteries and your veins, and that is one of the reasons that we as Americans have so much heart disease. That's why it's our number one killer still to this day. We also have all sorts of other problems that I think originate from this. CVAs, strokes, I think diabetes. A lot of people talk about that there is a strong indication that those people that eat a Western diet get diabetes more, cancers more. So you may not believe this, but I believe a bulk of the scientific research shows that if you can limit your lipids, that it's good. I see some nutritionists out there talking about the carnivore diet, how LDL is not a bad thing, and I'm like, I don't know if I believe that. That seems a little extreme. Lipitor was the number one prescribed drug in America. I think it still is, right? So it's the number one selling drug of all time, and that's because I think we eat too much fat. So if we can get away from meats, especially processed meats, if we can at least reduce those drastically, if we can reduce our oils, if we can get away from some of these highly processed foods, I think that is only going to benefit our health. Those are my thoughts. So once again, we're still trying to get this to a boil. We're going to cook that for about 20 minutes. I'm going to go 15 minutes. 15 minutes at a simmer once it gets to a boil. And it's taking a little bit of time. There's a lot of fluid in there. So once again, this cooking show will be directed a little bit by you. If you come in here and talk to me, communicate with me, comment, reach out to me on Facebook. I'm easy to find, Mark Stevenson. Or you can join the free group, Pop in the Plant Flavor, right? That's what the name of the YouTube channel is also. So we're talking about making some vegetables, eating some vegetables every once in a while. In my case, I try to do it more often than not. Do I sometimes cheat? My wife is an amazing baker. Do I sometimes have a slice of her cake, which I know has cream and eggs and some things that I personally try to minimize, right? So that is the gist of this channel, is trying to get you to eat a little more healthy. I think that diet is the number one things that Americans fail at. They also fail at their activity levels, but I think that if there were one thing that I would point to that you could change that would improve your health, improve your longevity, the number one thing would be nutrition. Then it would be your movement, right? So I currently am not moving enough. So I'm trying to get back to where I used to be. I used to move a lot more. I used to lift weights. I used to be much more active, and I'm in the process of getting better at that. And I would suggest that maybe you can too. Find ways to put in those extra steps. Maybe you park and walk further. When you go to the grocery store, find the furthest parking spot. Use the stairs more. Get off your electric scooter, your electric bicycle. Get a real bicycle if you have a bicycle. Start moving your legs. And then if you've got time, start putting some physical exercise. Maybe add a weightlifting routine or some calisthenics or some body weight type exercises to your regimen somehow, right? Get up off your desk chair every once in a while, every hour. Get up for 10 minutes, walk around your desk. Find a way to get a treadmill under a standing desk. I don't know what that looks like for you, but move. Nutrition, food, sleep, breathing and relaxation. I think those are super important. Also, getting better at that, right? I think that there's a specific way you should breathe when you are trying to amp up in activity. And I think there's a specific way that you need to breathe when you are trying to relax. And those are two different things. And I think there's an amazing whole learning on just breath work and relaxation and meditation and all those things. And I think this can be a very integral part of your health regimen, whatever that is, right? So once again, let's just look over here. Is this boiling? I'm going to cut off at 30 minutes whether this dish is done or not. I will show you the final result when I'm done on Facebook. And if you're on YouTube, I'm going to figure a way to start doing that also. So anyway, let's go ahead and cut it off here because we're basically just wasting time. We're just waiting for a boil, then a simmer, then some time, then the soup will be done. I will show you some pictures on Facebook, Pop on the Plant Flavor. You guys have a great day. Talk soon. Next Saturday, come join me. If somebody wants to come and teach me something on here, I would love to learn from you. You guys have a great Saturday and stay healthy and functional out there. You guys have a good one.